Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Something as complex and as individualized as the life well led can't be reduced to 7 keys or even 50 keys. But that said, amid our information overload, such lists may have some value, if only as a starting place for our contemplating how to live our lives. In that spirit, if someone were to put a gun to my head and say, "Give me the 7 keys to the life well led or else," this is what I'd say. Number one, decide everything cosmically. It's not enough to follow the rules or even to decide to keep or break the rules to take care of your family. The life well led requires striving to make cosmically wise decisions. That is, the decisions that will do the most good for the most people without violating an individual's fundamental right, for example, the right to not be killed. But I will leave the death penalty issue for another day. For example, let's say you're a psychotherapist and your client is considering divorce. You've asked all manner of questions to help the client decide, but after that, the client insists, "No, tell me what you think." The therapist that decides to answer must consider not just what's best for the client, but for the spouse, any kids, and perhaps surprisingly, what's best for society. Let's say the client is very charitable, and in a divorce would have to give half to the other spouse, who tends to spend wildly on silly luxuries. Cosmic decision-making requires the therapist to consider that. Or let's say the spouse is a cancer researcher who has great potential to save many lives, but is a person who's emotionally fragile and in a divorce would be devastated, likely requiring a long time to recover, and therefore do a worse job at work. That too needs to be considered. No one says it's easy to think cosmically, but that is core to the life well led. Excuse me. Another example. Let's say you're the supervisor of a poor-performing employee. Deciding whether to coach the person or replace the person depends on not just how the person would feel if let go, but the probability of coaching helping sufficiently, what you would otherwise do with the time, the likelihood of finding a better replacement, and the impacts of the current versus the likely replacement on coworkers, bosses, customers, and even society. Take even a mundane example, an accounting clerk. If that person is slow and or error prone, it means that people and your organization don't get the deserved money, let alone on time. If it also means that the organization's accountants have to spend a lot of extra time searching for and correcting errors, risking losing customers, and it makes the organization more prone to a time-consuming, stressful, say, IRS audit. The life well led requires considering the impacts of actions on all stakeholders. Next, the next key to, I'm calling them lamps for the life well led. The second one is responsibility above all. The life well led requires working diligently and ethically to the extent of a person's abilities. Anathema would be people who make the least effort they can get away with and who cut ethical corners both in their professional and personal life. Now, that doesn't require people to choose a career they find difficult. Rather, a responsible contributory career builds on natural strengths and on acquired knowledge, which thus makes the career not inordinately difficult. The third of the 7 lamps to a life well led is treasure time. That's cliche, but it's true. Time is our most valuable and ever evaporating possession. And while nearly everyone would agree with that idea, some people waste so much time. For example, spending hours each day on puerile TV or video games, or eating up an entire day playing a round of golf, or who shop until they drop. The life well led requires spending a lot of time using your abilities to make the biggest difference possible. And to that end, until it's habitual, you might want to, when deciding whether and how to do a task, to ask yourself, is this a good use of time? The third of the 7 lamps to a life well led is to communicate effectively. Most people think they communicate well, but communication is more difficult than many people think. For example, listening requires not just listening to what's said carefully, what's underneath, deciding whether to think ahead or really just stay focused on what the person's saying, when to be tactful, usually, and when to be blunt, and whether to interrupt, usually not. Speaking requires concision, weighing what your listener or listeners want and needs to know, and as appropriate, using ethical tools of persuasion, for example, logic, relevant statistics, relevant anecdotes, examples, and analogies. Alas, too often those latter four, the statistics, the anecdotes, the examples, the analogies, are insufficiently applicable. Effective ethical communication is core to the life well led, but it is a lot more difficult than may be apparent. The fifth of the seven is act. Many people are guilty of excessive rumination, letting fear of failure blind them to the wisdom of taking low-risk actions at least. That usually yields more success, or at least lessons can then be applied to future efforts. The sixth lamp toward the life well led is balancing gratitude with striving. Too much gratitude results in stasis. Too much striving often sacrifices ethics. Balance is required. For example, the fundraiser, Living the Life Well Led, will work hard to raise money for a worthy organization, but not push unduly. For example, exaggerate the likely benefits of a donation, or push potential donors beyond what they can comfortably afford, even if that means that the fundraiser doesn't win Fundraiser of the Month. And the seventh of the seven lamps to a life well led is grow. No, it's not necessary to ever plod on the educational treadmill, but part of the life well led is to spend a reasonable amount of time continuing to learn what's important, and it can be in pleasant ways. For example, the aforementioned psychotherapist might want to start or join a patient review group. Anyone might distract themselves from a maddening commute by listening to a career-related or a personal growth audiobook. Or would you enjoy taking a course, in person as COVID lifts, or online? Tens of thousands of courses on every imaginable topic, most with syllabi and student reviews, are searchable on websites such as udemy.com, that's udemy.com, coursera.org, that's coursera.org, and linkedinlearning.com. Those seven lamps are difficult to turn on, but once they're illuminated, they can indeed wisely light our path. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.